Hello everyone, there is a lot of terminology inside this game, and to be honest with you, I didn't know what all of them were or what some of them did before making this video. If you saw the one from the other day, I kept on calling it a hot buff. I didn't realize that meant healing over time, but I went through on every single hero, found out what the stats are and what they actually do, and we're gonna go over them today. Also, I wanna say that some of these may not be 100% correct. This is from my perception and the community's perception of what we think these are and what we've seen inside the game. Now, I do want to talk about the skills with being active, passive, and awaken. The active skills, this is what you're going to build up your meter for to make an active skill happen, and that's usually where you see things like I always mention it, kinja slash attack. The passive skill are just going to be ones that are all on their own. This could be when somebody's attacking an ally or when somebody drops below a certain hit point. Those are just going to happen, and it's even sometimes related to the normal attacks. The awaken skill is more of something I'd call maybe a passive, maybe an active, but this is usually going to happen once you get into the game a little bit. For example, when kinja goes and gets down to little health or no health, he's going to create a shield. Other heroes might revive somebody, another one being when all other allies are dead, increase attack or turn into a giant. You've probably heard the term thrown around plenty of times for buff and debuff. Buffs are obviously going to help you and debuffs are going to hurt you, or, for example, debuff the enemy and hurt them. Just like the one I realized the other day, which was the hot buff, which is actually healing over time. Thought it was hot this whole time, but hey, that's just me. But you may also see the one that's dot buff, which is damage over time. These will be things like burn, bleeding, poison, even acid. You'll actually see the whole time the turn's going on, you see that number just ticking away doing damage. Along with buffs, you'll also see what's considered crowd control or is labeled as CC. And there's a bunch of those, from stun, shock, restraint, sleep, even freeze and sandstorm, and you might be asking yourself, why so many different ones? Why don't they just make them all stun, for example? Well, some heroes will do additional damage to a hero that's been frozen versus a hero that's been stunned. And there's also one I'd kind of consider a mixture of a debuff and a crowd control, and that's silence. This is going to prevent you from gaining any energy inside the game and also prevent you from using any active skills. Now, the normal attacks, that's just gonna be you going up and poking the enemy, where the active skills are gonna have that really cool animation to them. And what decides when you're gonna be using the active skill is going to be energy. This is why you see some stats out there like reduce energy in the back row, or all allies adjacent to you have increased 20 energy. This is once again just gonna determine how fast you can pop that active. This sometimes gets confused with speed, and speed, all this is just deciding at what point you're going to attack during that round. If there's 10 heroes inside a round, you're going to either attack first, second, third, or so on. If you have 0 speed, you're going to be attacking dead last. The only thing that prevents you from attacking during a round is going to be some sort of crowd control like that stun, freeze, or the other ones I mentioned. So let's talk about defense. This is pretty much how much damage you're not going to take inside the game. So let's say you have 30 defense and your enemy has 100 attack, you're going to be taking 70 damage. But there's also a crit defense. So figure that hero that goes and attacks and hits 100 every time, every now and then they might hit for 150. That crit defense is just going to be a way to say, hey, we're going to knock that 150 down to whatever number based by your stats. Now, crit defense may also be known as crit reduction, but the other thing there is too is crit resistance. This is going to be more of how often you'll be getting hit by a critical attack. So there's a chance that an enemy goes to attack you and they were going to crit you, but instead it turns into a regular, boring old damage attack. The crit rate, on the other hand, is going to be how often you hit those critical hits. But then I also saw things in there for crit heal, crit weaken. Just kind of figure that everything around here is going to be a crit rate, crit resistance, and crit defense. Depending on which type of hero is hitting you, there is also physical resistance and magical resistance. Anything that's a supporter, intelligence, you know, the ones with the staffs, those are pretty much going to be doing magical damage to you. Now, there could be a chance that some other ones that aren't supporters out there might still be doing some magic damage. We gotta test the numbers on that. As far as your physical resistance though, that's gonna be more with your dealers and your agility, your tanky type guys. But for example, the ones I'm not really sure of is something like Soul with his fire. Yes, he is considered an agility dealer, but there could be the chance that that fire is magical. Once again though, we gotta do testing on that to figure that out. Now, the next one I wanna talk about is dodge rate and accuracy. Just the way it sounds, one is gonna be the opposing of the other. Dodge is gonna be how much you move around. Accuracy is gonna be how much you can focus on hitting that. I guess before I mention that, I should have talked about penetration, because this is going to be once again revolving around defense. How much of that defense is ignored, how much of that magical resistance or physical resistance, crit resistance, penetration can affect all of those of how much of that stuff is just saying, nope, not worried about you, I'm sneaking that damage through. I'm not certain, but I think this could even be how much damage is getting by a shield too, your bubble that you see around the characters. There's also the phrasing of stacks and times per battle, and I like to think of this in terms of pancakes. Think of stacks as you get a pancake, they stack up on top of each other until you get the max stack of 5 pancakes. Whereas 5 times per battle, you might just get an individual pancake for this person, an individual pancake for that person. You're still getting 5 pancakes, they're just spread out across the board. Actually, when I first started out the channel, I thought it'd be a great idea to have a slogan and try to get sponsored by Bisquick, so whenever I killed somebody inside something like Halo, I'd say, go eat some pancakes. It never caught on, and I never landed a deal with Bisquick. I also saw terminology in there for transparent, for Sanders for example, that cannot be targeted when you're pretty much invisible, but you can still get attacks out. And another one for Beast Hero, which was just referring to when there was another Horde hero on the team. Revive is pretty straightforward. You revive, you get an extra life, or however much it tells you get for health, but lifesteal is one that can get a little bit confusing for people. All this is when you're doing damage, it's going to be how much of that hit points you got from that damage you're going to absorb yourself. Oh, and absorb is another phrase they use too, but same thing, how much you're grabbing. Recovery rate, on the other hand, is just pretty much going to be how much HP you're going to be able to get when you're healing. Now, provoke is one you'll hear a lot of times thrown around because of a Bala, and all this is pretty much like a taunt. You hit an enemy, they get provoked, they're gonna go for the hero that provoked them. It doesn't mean that they get reduced damage when they're attacking, but a lot of times when they're provoked, there's another stat in there which is gonna say, when an enemy is provoked, take 20% less damage from them. When it comes to heroes like Dalakus or Ken, they use chain attacks, and this is going to attack adjacent enemies. Any enemies that are touching each other. There's no certain path it's going to go, but it's going to go and bounce from one to the next until there's no more that are around. But it's usually something like can chain attack up to 3 or 4 times. And as I just said, the other one I get a lot too is what's adjacent. That's just going to be anything touching the hero that says adjacent allies. They'll even use the wording sometimes of adjacent behind you, and there's even sometimes like Calyx, I think it is, that will do an attack in a straight line, which means yes, it can go on an angle, but it's just gonna go and shoot in a line. A little different from Kyan's attack, which is gonna shoot straight back, which has a little bit of a zigzag to it. You know, we go 1, 2, 3, where Calyx is gonna be more of an angle of just straight. Counterattack is one that you'll see on Olga when she gets below a certain hit points. Anybody that hits her, she will immediately strike back. And then we also have CC resist. I probably should have said that one earlier too. That's just going to be how much you can avoid getting that stunned, shocked, or frozen, whatever the other 15 of them that they are. But I think that's it for all of them besides the basic ones like attack and HP. If there's one that I missed that you want to know, put it down in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to help you out. If you guys want to know how I spend my gems inside the game, take a look at this video right here. Other than that, thanks for watching, and remember, I pick my butt.